Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also all smart TVs 2016 forward. And don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti, known for Locked On Leafs, Sportsnet.ca, and this show too. You'll see him at football games, ready to ask important questions of the Toronto Argonauts after a game. And you know what? The other thing is, he enjoys the Canadian Football League just as I do. Biggest reason why we do this together. We really enjoy the game. And I guess when you have something that you really care about, it does, it does make you think a little harder sometimes about certain circumstances. I will say this, it's time to move on. The two exhibition games have been played, David. It's time to move on with the quarterback controversy. And we can do that with what we saw in that last exhibition game. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, it's time to have the games that actually matter in the standings finally come. Like I this year felt like training camp kind of came out of nowhere for
I'm
me,
not. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
right? And so I'm of the belief that this is one of those things where the earlier start to the season I think is going to creep up to people a little bit, and it's going to be interesting to see how many teams are ready for that early start to the season.
I think also that early start works out well if you're not the Edmonton Elks. They had to change their time because of the Edmonton Oilers' success in, of course, the NHL, having clinched Stanley Cup final berth. And so the Elks have scheduled their game a couple hours earlier. So there's some cause and effect there too. Normally, the Stanley Cup would be close to ending, if not ending, by the time the Canadian Football League starts. In this case, there's a bit of overlap.
There is a little bit of overlap, but it's interesting because I thought, okay, yeah, you can switch the times of the games. I wondered what that would do about the broadcast schedule because you know it's not just telling people to come for a different time. It's also the broadcast at TSN has to kind of plan for it too. But I think this is always something that was talked about when the Stanley Cup final schedule was released a little while ago. You had to think that Edmonton was ready for that possibility that this game was going to happen, and I think it's a realization of two things. One, it's the biggest sporting event going on in Canada, the Stanley Cup final, when a Canadian team is in there. I mean, gosh, we've only had since 2010. This is the third time a Canadian team has made it to the Cup final.
More teams have made it from Florida
Yeah.
for the Cup final.
So there's that. But, what the CFL, I think, had going for them is they didn't pack the schedule into 1 day or 2 days. 4 days, four different games. Every game kind of gets its own spotlight. I think that flexibility, I think, allowed for this to happen. And personally, while I know that some people like the evening starts, I prefer football games to start earlier.
I'm inclined to agree with you as well on both counts, and I'll give my reason why I think it's great that they separated the games. It makes it easier for everybody to watch every game, because if you put three games on in a row, as much as that sounds like football binging, right? Which sounds like TV, right? Movies, TV shows, blah blah blah. It's a little harder to do that. If they're separated, you can concentrate on a game at a time. Like for myself, and I guess if I'm to say I'm a CFL fan and I like watching every game, which I like to do, I like to watch every game. This circumstance works a lot better than the other, in my opinion. And I think the words that you used are very accurate as well. It's about devouring and acquiring the enjoyment of the game, not at the end of a fire hose. So so you can, you can be a bit of a connoisseur for every game. The game can end, you can think about what happened and how it impacts on what you thought before the game started, and then talk about it to yourself or to, in my case, have the opportunity to talk to you and other people that I talk to about the games. I think it spreads out the, if you will, the PR for the league. If it's on every day, it's mentioned every day rather than one big, you know, one big one day, everything going on at once.
Yeah, no, sorry, bad timing on that one. Um,
Nothing to sneeze at what I said, huh?
no, not at
Oh,
all.
well.
It's one of those things where um, I think maybe the CFL will eventually realize that flexibility is a good thing. The NFL flexes games all the time. Now that has more to do with matchups and which teams are good and which teams are bad, but it's just a realization too that look, I know that evenings are good for prime time and for broadcast, but the CFL doesn't have a broadcast issue. They don't have an attendance issue on TV. The issue is in the stands. And I think when you look at the demographic you're trying to get to, it's the younger demographic, it's the family demographic. Those people aren't going out to evening games. I've been told this. People have been yelling and screaming at this for the last couple of years. And I tell them it's, if you ask certain staff members on the team, they would love to have the games earlier in the day because they don't have to be there till midnight, 1, 2 a.m. still at the stadium. But they're also fighting a battle with something other than what the team wants. And that's a little bit of what the broadcaster wants. I think people do need to realize that.
And the whole reason I brought up this topic is because they've gone from broadcasting a couple of games and that's it. They choose a couple of games that you could see, that the fans could see. In other words, there were a lot of games you couldn't see anything of the game, right? Now they've done the streaming thing, and I think the streaming thing, I think it worked rather well, except for the fact that you got to sit there and wait for it to start. They said that the games, it says at the beginning, well, the broadcast will start 5 minutes before kickoff. Well, that didn't quite happen with the Argo one. It started pretty much seconds after the kickoff, around there. Anyway, when I picked up on it, anyway. But that's a tiny little bit of a bug. But anybody who was a fan of any team in the Canadian Football League could see the exhibition games, and could enjoy them the way was possible. And the broadcast, the quality of the broadcast, yes, it's very basic, right? You got your main camera, and then you have your replay.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's just one of those things where you're fighting the battles on multiple fronts, right? You can't win them all, so you have to pick the one that's going to give you, I guess, try to satisfy as many parties as possible. Let's just say.
Absolutely. And I think they did a good job. I think it's good that they had all the games on there so everybody could see every game. And what's even better is that you could go back if you wanted to watch it again for whatever reason. You could go back. They were on demand. So after the way last year went with the statistics, which was a nightmare, and it really, I don't think it wasn't very good for the Canadian Football League to have the issue that happened. Hopefully this year it will be better. They claim that it will be better, and I assume it will be better because it can't be any worse than it was last year. Zero statistics is not a high bar to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the one thing about the CFL. Like the expectations are generally, I say, what's the best way of saying it? Achievable. They're not set too high. They're reasonable, right? Like we don't expect And I think fans, I mean, some fans might understand this. There's a lot of fans who don't understand it. The CFL has a bar, right? There's a tier. I call it a tier system. They're not the NFL. They're not part of those major sporting brands because those brands are worth billions. But what the CFL has going for it, and what a lot of people have told me, is longevity, reputation, and intimacy. You and I were just at that preseason game golf. I know we we're kind of turning the page on the preseason, but we were just at that preseason game in Guelph. How many sporting events, Frank, have you been to after the game and you see players and fans standing around sharing pizza together? Oh, you
That
weren't at. I should know you weren't at the game,
no, I wasn't
so
at the
maybe
game.
I should elaborate a bit more. So after we had done our interviews, we came outside. All of a sudden, we see some fans. Fans like to hang around the stadium after games. You and I have seen that many times before.
Absolutely.
And players will actually come and talk to fans. Well, after the Argo game, there were stacks of Domino's pizza. I know how much you like Domino's pizza.
There you go.
And literally, players were going and talking to fans, and then they're just like, "You want some pizza? We got lots of pizza." And they were giving fans slices of Domino's pizza to enjoy and talk with them. And like, it's crazy to see some of the players recognize fans and generally ask how they're doing, which I think is, again, you don't see that in other professional sports.
No.
It's truly one of those unique things about the CFL that helps. If you the CFL should be grateful that the players are this open and willing to do that with fans, because it helps them. It's such a big caveat that I think a lot of leagues can't hold a candle to, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And back in the day, I guess it's been about 5 years, maybe 6 years. We used to, after every game, go to Shoeless Joe's and meet the players there, and the players would be there with the fans, and I mean, the players weren't sharing their food with the with the fans, but the fans would be able to buy their own food and walk around and talk to the players. That was always something that I thought, as you just said right now, that made the Canadian Football League different than other sports, and that camaraderie between the players and the fans is especially um, positive and important to the fabric of the Canadian Football League. So yeah, that was a great thing, and it was a full house too, from what I understand. So it was a success on many counts.
It was. No, it was. It was a fact. It was so packed. I don't know if you were at the game last year with me.
Okay,
Um,
no, it wasn't.
it we have a tape. They have to set up on the bleachers with the fans, and they have tables set up. So it takes a few rows away. But there's this one row that technically we're allowed to pass through. They kind of blocked it off. It got so busy. There were so few seats available. Fans actually just decided, can we sit? We have nowhere to sit. Like, there were people already standing along the sideline standing areas, and the Guelph Stadium was packed. Now, I know that it's not a 10,000 seat stadium. Still, I say there are close to 5,000 people at this game for a preseason game in Guelph on a Friday night. Have you ever tried to get to Guelph on a Friday night? I did. That wasn't easy, but people did it. Give them a lot of credit.
Good sign. Good sign. Hopefully, that excitement will show up in game one.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
for sure.
I think it will. There was an announcement before we went to air. I don't know how old the announcement was, but I just got an email from the Canadian Football League saying that the Jonas Brothers will be the act at the Grey Cup, the 111th Grey Cup.
Yeah, that's I don't hate that decision either. I wonder if that was the if that was a CFL getting them, or if that was BC getting them.
I would think that I would think that I think it's a
Joint
neither.
effort.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think neither of them would have done that on their own.
It's
Because of what you're implying. Your implication is that BC is very involved with making this game a success, right? And I'm sure they had some input into doing it. It wouldn't surprise me. Well, historically, ever since the new ownership came in, they've had some really great acts at BC Place.
yeah. I think this is also just the fact they did it now, right? How many times have we gone into the season or late into the season wondering who's doing the Grey Cup halftime show? The league learned their lesson from 2021. I think it was 2021, the first Grey Cup in Hamilton.
Right.
That no, sorry, 20. No, it's not 2021. It was 2022 in Saskatchewan. Wasn't the best Grey Cup halftime show. It was the three country artists,
Oh,
right? See, you were there, Frank. I wasn't, but
no,
watching it on
I was
TV,
there, and I'm trying to remember. I was
it,
more.
it
I
was
was
not
more
a memorable
interested in
halftime
football.
show. There was like people didn't go to the game and think, "Oh, there's gonna be a great halftime show," because I don't think it really was, in my opinion.
I you got me at a disadvantage. I
Mm.
was there, and I'm trying to remember. I'm, I'm trying to remember, and it was it. See, I'm not that well versed in country music, but I
Yeah,
do know that they were. He was uh, the main guy. Was I'm trying to remember.
he was part of the Florida Georgia
Yeah.
line.
Yes, that's right.
I can't remember which one, if he was the Florida or if he was the Georgia. I think it was
uh,
I think it was Tyler Hubbard. I think he was
yeah,
Georgia.
Tyler Hubbard. That's it.
And but again, it was not a performance I go and say,
Tyler Hubbard, Jordan Davis, and Josh Ross.
yeah, see, and people had no idea. And they were and it just lacked. So this is a good thing for the CFL realizing we can't make it look like we didn't put effort into picking the halftime show. And they did this time. I'll give them a lot of credit on that.
Yeah. Well, they had the year before that. It was the Arkells, and being Hamilton, that's not a surprise. But the following Hamilton game in the 1/10 was Green Day, which was I think that was a coup.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, it's again another well-known group. Yes, a little bit older. It was a heck of a halftime show.
I stood
That's for
outside and
sure.
listened to it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, uh, it was fantastic. It was great, but more of a name pick. And the Jonas Brothers have, I think, a bit of a name as well, right? And longevity as well. They've been around for a while. They've done single acts. They've done stuff on their own. So it'll be interesting. It's of the same kind of, it's along that Justin Bieber, that vein of people who will like it, right? Which some people suggest that isn't really a football crowd kind of group. I can already hear that coming. Anyway, I'm just saying I can already hear
Mhm.
that coming. But the thing is, the reason the CFL does it or BC or the combination of the two is that it's for the TV crowd and the buzz that it creates for the game for the people who are watching. So because of their popularity and they may not be a football band, but still, or the generation of people that watch the Canadian Football League and go to the Grey Cup, they're still a big name. So it'll be interesting. For people like myself, I go for the football game. And I'll stay for the act when I can if I'm not looking to get ready for when the game starts because as you know our priority is the game. So anything that you have to do that doesn't have anything to do with the game you do while the act is going. I missed and this might be a sad admission, but I missed half the Shania Twain act
Ooh,
when she did her thing, right?
in Ottawa, yeah.
I was busy taking care of things I couldn't do while the game was on. So I took care of all that stuff. And then by the time I got back into the press box and she was out there, I missed the entrance on the Skidoo. Uh, it was it was great. But you know what? The football game's what matters to me. I'm not the right person to talk to about is this the right act? Is this the wrong act? They're entertaining. I mean, none of the entertainment that the CFL has ever had has been not entertaining. It's been entertaining. If you like good music, it's going to be good. It just might not be exactly what you're looking for.
No, exactly, and I think that's something that needs to be shared. No act is ever going to be. No act is ever going to satisfy everybody. I've seen it all the time at the Super Bowl, so I think that's something that needs to be reminded.
But congratulations on the Jonas Brothers being a part of the Grey Cup. That'll be fantastic for sure. Um, let's talk a little bit about. I got a couple issues I want to talk about that came up watching the football, and one of the primary issues that crawled into my brain, and it has really banged around in this little noodle here. I found it interesting, very interesting, that the Canadian Football League and Hamilton in particular has decided to put a fullback under center on the short yardage situation. In other words, when they needed a couple of yards, rather than bring in the third string or second string quarterback, they brought in a fullback. That makes so much sense to me, and I'm just wondering, I've always thought of why don't they do that instead of the quarterback? I understand that with the quarterback, you have the secondary option of pass and the fake can happen, right? But what do you think of that, of putting a fullback in there?
If you want my opinion, yeah, I don't like that the quarterback is out there usually in those situations because I understand they're probably the best at taking the snaps, but they're not exactly the best at pushing a pile, in my opinion. Where I think the teams go wrong with the short yardage, if your offensive line is not able to push, it's all about the push from that offensive line. Can they push that defensive line back to give a hole for whether it's the quarterback or the fullback? Fullback will give a little more of a push. He's someone that can really push the pile more than a quarterback can. There's two things I have an issue with on that. One being I have seen fullbacks take snaps in the NFL and fumble the ball at the goal line. Thank you, Dallas Cowboys, for that reminder. And then being told why doesn't the running back do the job? I've always not liked the short yardage at the goal line because you've got this massive end zone. We're talking 20 yards. And you're trying to score on that narrow little window of the line of scrimmage. You could easily, and the best play that remind me of that, East Final 2022. The Argos bring in Chad Kelly in a short yardage. But what did they do? They lined up a receiver on the outside, faked it, ran a play action, easy touchdown. Because the Alouettes didn't see it coming. And I think the first team that decides instead of running the short yardage, we're going to do something different is going to be the one that comes away as the genius.
Yeah,
Teams started doing the whole, instead of pushing the ball forward, quarterback takes it, runs to the right a bit, then tries to find an opening instead of going through the middle where the bigger bodies are. But again, I've never liked how things do it.
well, absolutely, and I think what you're speaking to is to try not to become predictable, because predictability is something you can't do in football because they're scouted so deeply. The last thing you want to be is predictable. So if you have a fullback and you're guaranteeing he's going to run, so the next thing I think that's going to happen is they're going to find a fullback that has a tiny bit of an arm that can surprise them and really surprise them with a throw like you're talking about. But I think the biggest thing that this speaks to me, David, you know, for the past few years, we've seen more, what the Chris Streveler era, I'll call it, right? Where you have the big lumbering quarterback that can get you that short yardage every time, that has the strength and ability to power through, like you were saying, pushing the line back, that he could do it. It kind of, if they start doing this, if Hamilton does this, they don't have to be worried about having a type A quarterback and a type B quarterback. They could have two type A quarterbacks. In other words, they could have two quarterbacks that are starter-ish, right? Where you don't have to use your second quarterback position for a guy that happens to run short yardage. And that to me is interesting, especially considering with the change a couple of years ago, where they had the situation where you could line up two quarterbacks in one play. And that move to me is telling me that Hamilton's thinking about that. And when they dress their quarterbacks, they don't have to worry about dressing a quarterback, like I said, that that can run the ball through a line. They can dress two quarterbacks that are legitimate first, you know, they play like a starting quarterback. And never mind that other asset that's necessary because of short yardage.
Yeah, I think that when you look at when you look at the way the rosters are done now, teams I think need to maximize every position more so now than ever. And I don't think teams necessarily always do that. Like we look at Dakota Prukop, who was released by
Wow.
Saskatchewan. He's now back in Edmonton. He's someone that maybe, if he himself as a quarterback, maybe he kind of wished the team didn't just view him as a short yardage. It,
Exactly.
Antonio Pipkin, another
Exactly.
one that was released. Because guess what? As much as they're good on the short yardage, at some point they're going to need to be viewed as more than that. And nobody understood that more than Cody Fajardo, who in the 2017 Grey Cup
Hmm.
or 2017 was the Argos' third quarterback. He eventually moved on to go and play in Saskatchewan and ended up being their starting quarterback. And then ends up winning a Grey Cup.
In
All
Montreal.
because a team realized that there was more to him than just a short yardage quarterback. He could actually be a quarterback. And we're talking about in this league needing more competent quarterbacks. He's a player in my like these are players in my opinion that you need to get them to do more than just be a short yardage quarterback. Show that they can do more.
Yeah, you're not saying he's the exception to the rule, that if you hire if you sign a quarterback, or if you field a quarterback and put him on the field and his job isn't what you normally expect from a quarterback, are you freezing that person into that kind of slot? And do they have to break through and make it harder to be a quarterback because they have to break through that previously conceived notion, right? I think that's what you're saying, and I agree
Yeah.
with you.
There's too much of that in the CFL. There's too much of an idea of a thought that this guy only does this and can only do this. It's the teams that say, let's see if what more he can do.
Right.
Right? Let's see if a player who's can do more than just be a good like a good returner. Can he do more on offense for us? At the time our offense is a premium in the CFL, they should be looking at other ways to get it going.
Yeah, and Kelly's a good example to speak about his ability, and the way I think he speaks to what you're talking about. It was established, obviously, in the coaching staff, the head coach in particular, that he was a starting quarterback. That's where he belonged, and he did the job that they asked him to do. That was the kind of job we've been talking about. But they didn't let him stifle into that position. They knew he was going to be their starting quarterback. The Grey Cup, the victory, the little bit of success that he had at the end of that game offered him an opportunity to be the starting quarterback. Not every quarterback in the position that he was playing that year could say or do that. And Fajardo is one that broke through. And there's other quarterbacks, and you've mentioned them. I agree with you 100%. I don't see why a Pipkin can't be a starter. I don't see why any quarterback that's used for short yardage can't be a starter. But they can't if all they do is, and what they practice, that's what they're concentrating on. They're taking important time, development time, becoming a better and better fullback that has a quarterback number on their back.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I totally agree on that. And look, you also take away from the fullback as well, the fullback position.
Right.
Fullback position is more than just a guy who blocks. He's supposed to be a bigger body that if you need to go and get short yards, but the boxes, the other team is stacking the box. You need to understand that these players are capable. These are athletes. These guys are capable of doing more. I've seen it, and I've seen these guys practice, and I always think, oh, like, can this guy not do more than what's being shown of him? But teams sometimes just set in their ways on how they want players to do things, and again, it's the teams that figure out how to squeeze every ounce of every player is the ones that find the way to succeed.
Absolutely. Next up, and these are all questions because I love watching football games because they raise questions for me. The next comment is by, it's an easy segue. The two quarterbacks the Argos had. We go to the Argo games, so we follow that team. So I'd like to talk about them and the situation. They had all three in the game: Arbuckle, Scott, and Dukes. Um, I have to say, both Dukes and Scott looked really good.
I thought Dukes was clear and above. Like, you see why they have so much faith in him this
Right.
year. He's not going to be as flashy as Chad Kelly, but he's going to be able, if he's able to get that ball out of his hands, um, then he'll be fine.
And uses
He
to get out of trouble.
right, and use his legs to get out of trouble. It's funny. I asked him after the game about that. He's like, I really don't want to run, right? Like, I really don't want to run unless it's called for. He, like, that touchdown, that wasn't his plan. His plan wasn't to run, but that's just what the play called for.
Absolutely.
And he's also the belief that his thing is getting the ball out quick, so that the defense doesn't have time to think.
Absolutely.
And you saw that. You saw that a lot of the crossing routes, getting the ball out quick. He didn't really go for any deep shots. I'm sure those are going to happen too. Scott is more the pocket guy. He's supposed to be the accuracy. I thought he was a bit off, but I can see the potential he has. He's got, I think, a little more of a commanding presence. And then when it comes to Arbuckle, he's a safety blanket in my opinion. If someone gets hurt, or if one of these guys needs a veteran voice to talk to, that's what he's there for.
Absolutely.
He knows his role. He's not complaining. Again, I talked to him during the week. He's just happy that he's on the field, because he wasn't on the field. He didn't have a job. He was sitting at home,
Mm.
right? So in a way, there's a bit of happiness, but also relief at the same time.
The other thing that, I don't want I don't want to irritate Argo fans too badly here, and it might sound like I'm apologizing or making excuses for the Tiger Cats. Um, they've got a new head coach, and training camp is fast. There is no hitting the ground running with the way training camps work in the Canadian Football League. Milanovic's team didn't really seem prepared. I think mostly because they really were, evaluating players. They were using what exhibition games in the Canadian Football League are notorious for. Evaluating players, and his team did not look um, that ready to play. But then, as the game rolled around, they came through at halftime. I don't know whether we can say that the Argos took their foot off the pedal or whatever, but Hamilton seemed to play a little better as the game wore on.
Yeah, Toronto took their starters out. They were getting a little. They understood they didn't want to get hurt.
We
as
saw.
well.
I don't know. Did you find out about the injury to the running back, the non-contact injury?
Yeah, I didn't get it. We didn't get it. Really couldn't offer much because we talked to him almost right after the game. He got cut, and I think that's likely an ACL.
Yeah,
Like that was right away. I knew it and I saw it, and I'm like,
no,
oh,
I did too. Those non-contact injuries, they're worse than they're
mhm.
it's incredible. How just the body just gives way like that.
It's brutal, brutal. Because
Really
I
sad.
actually liked what LeBorn did
Yes.
throughout the game. I thought he was really starting to. I thought he was going to score. I think he would have scored if he didn't suffer that injury. Just brutal luck for him. But I also think that you know it's part of the part of the game, right? These players know the risks they're taking, unfortunately, when they sign these contracts too.
Yeah, and like you before the game, you stretch, you do everything you can to get ready for the game, and then you stand on the sidelines for you know at least it was at least like 45 minutes of the 60-minute game, and then finally you get in, and you know they're motivated to make the team. They're giving everything they have, and sometimes the body's not ready uh, to move at that level. The task is too much, and that's one of the cases here where a non-contact injury will probably eliminate a whole season out of him, and that's too bad. That's a real sad way to go. We see it too many times. We hear training is changing, has been changing over the years. We're stretching and has been taking over above strengthening or excessive strengthening, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's it is always a tough dynamic when you think about the league and the competition and all those things. Like yeah, it's kind of where things kind of stand in my opinion with the way that you know players and training and all these things go. You know, it's not like how it used to be, and that's also not. I think this was on turf. It's a turf field.
Yeah,
Argos don't play on a turf field.
no, they don't.
They practice on a turf field. They don't play on a turf field. Although most CFL teams do play on a turf field.
Absolutely. The next thing that a little tweak in my brain that I found interesting, a thought crossed my head. So Haggerty kicked some punts, but so did Liram Hiralahu, and he's known to do both kick and placement kicking as well, punting and kicking, right? What are the odds of Haggerty? He's got such a strong foot; it'll be hard for the Argos to set him down. He's an international too, which is the next best thing to being a Canadian, right? So I think that's an interesting thought that I'd like to pick your brain on the odds of Haggerty being the punter and Hiralahu staying to just kicking the field goals.
I think it's quite high in my opinion. I even think Haggerty might do kickoffs too.
Yeah,
Like he is so accurate. He knows where to place that ball. And I think he was so good last year that his injury, yes, while Boris Beatty did a good job, it took away a bit of a dynamic on what they wanted to do on special teams because he doesn't just kick it for distance; he pins teams. And when you in the CFL, I'm realizing more now than ever, field position means
oh,
everything.
it's everything.
Everything.
The size of the field, the width of the field, because you can eat up a lot of real estate in the Canadian Football League. So the more you have a team pinned back, and you shorten their playbook, the better off you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. And teams that are pinned deep in their own end, there's so much more pressure to pick up yards. They can't run the ball as much as they want to. Like that, the Argos had two turnovers because
Yep.
in that game, one because of the snap, because Argos knew they put pressure, it was going to It's going to lead to turnover, and Hamilton trying to force something deep and then gets picked off by a rookie who is making the team. Tyshawn Blackburn.
Hmm.
He's a guy that while he's coming straight out of U Sports, Calgary product that I think is going to be real good for Toronto this year.
Oh, there was another guy that I wanted to ask you about. Talking about the draft, and you know how I've promoted the fact that rookie Canadians are getting are becoming more and more successful. The immediacy of their success, and because they're trained in American football, many of them, right? They don't have that need to catch up with the way the pro coaches handle players, right, or the pro game, right? And well, I got to tell you, I was impressed with Michael. That guy, the first round pick
Oh,
of
Mittal.
Tal,
Kevin Mittal.
right?
He's from Quebec.
Yeah, and anyway, he was amazing, and just 100 yards. He could catch and run. The guy is a yak machine, and he's playing his first year of pro football, playing his first games in pro football. We saw this again last year with a young rookie of the year, an American, but still, the immediate success is amazing. I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of story.
Yeah, you could tell he's Ryan Dinwiddie is very high on him. The potential's there, but he said that there's work to be done when it comes to his routes and things like that. Because he is a rookie. There are things that pros do, but he had a lot. Kevin McDowell had a lot of good things to say about Rasheed Bailey, and learning behind him really is going to help him. And yeah, I mean that play he made. That's talent and athleticism at its finest.
The catch and run. I didn't know. I don't know what part of that play was more.
Oh, the catch was nice, but I do think his ability to turn around, stay in bounds, and go up the field, that was even far more impressive in my opinion.
I really like what the special teams with the Argos are doing right now. You see those punt, like I know the kick returners like Deontay McMahon. They showed some stuff. There was that sideline kick return. Uh, a lot of it got taken back, but it looked awesome as well. The Argos are looking good on special teams right now. I'm really impressed. They struggled a little bit with kick returns for a couple of years, right? They had great players, but for some reason they couldn't make it really happen. Last year was a great year for them as well, and they're building on that.
Yeah, they that's always been a big part of what they wanted to do. It's been the last few the last few years. It's really been a big part of their identity is the special teams. Um, obviously they don't have Javon Leake back, so I'm curious to see how likely going to be Janarian Grant, who takes that spot. But I think where it stems from though is Mickey Donovan, special
Yes.
teams coach. They brought him back. They extended his contract last year in September. Like that was one of the first contracts that they got done with their coordinator, and I think he's a big part of that. His schemes, the way he prepares those special teams guys, and they got key players playing special teams. Like Dan Adebayoye plays special teams.
Oh,
Dejan Brissett plays special teams. That's important.
speaking about it, boy, what did you think of his showing in that game?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of it?
Um,
I think he can do better. He was great, but he can. I expect more from him yet, even more.
I do too. No, for sure. Um, he had some good moments. I think they're working in so many guys. They want to see what Deontay McMahon can do.
Yep,
Right, Kadeem Carey. I think that's gonna be one of those things where he's a guy who gets better as the game goes along and the game gets more physical. He's a physical runner. He reminds me a lot of AJ Ouellette.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna have to find a way to really attack the hole. And the offensive line is going to work that up for him too, though. I think when you get the full complement of the offensive line, it's going to make such a big big deal too, right?
Absolutely. And I guess we don't have much time left, so which is good because there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. The continuing growth of big receivers. We're seeing more and more of them, David. What do you think of that? And in that game, there were quite a few. Hamilton and Toronto.
Well, I my issue with that game was how many drives,
Drop.
especially for Toronto, ended in field goals.
Yes.
The drops were part of it too. Like the Argos, it was almost like watching them in 2021 all over again. Get down the field, get to the red zone, come up with only 3 points. That's going to be a problem for them this year if they are not turning some of those drives into touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's a function of how you create an offense around the quarterback that you know is going to be there. Right now, I think and not to suggest that there isn't a quarterback that the Argos have in mind to start the season because they at least say they do. That I think they still don't know who the guy is going to be, David. I just think that it's really important that the kind of stuff that happened that you're discussing, quarterbacks have to make it to the end zone. In the Canadian Football League, that's the difference between winning and losing, and that is the red zone success.
It's every team. Like I saw Edmonton against BC go on the goal line, try to do 3 straight quarterback sneaks
Wow.
and fail in
Wow.
preseason.
Wow.
And that's not new for Edmonton.
No.
It's not new, and they're going to have to figure that out. And teams are going to have to start figuring that stuff out. You can't leave touchdowns on the board. You can't. It always comes back to bite you. Always. So I think again, offenses, and who was telling me this? One of the players was telling me this. Offenses take more time to get themselves
Yes.
going.
Yes.
You're going to see, I think, a few teams offensively are going to be a little slow out of the gate.
Absolutely. Happens
It
every
wouldn't surprise me, especially the teams that didn't play their starters a lot during preseason. Like Winnipeg with Kolaros. Curious, he didn't play a whole lot.
Yeah, for some reason there are reasons, but we can go into them maybe down the road. Because I wanted to ask you, I've had the opportunity, I've basically got everything I wanted to talk about. Was there something that caught your eye, your mind this week that you want to mention, talk about, ask me, whatever?
Well, the Blue Bombers, I'm writing a preview, and I do think that they're, again, going to be a good team. A little concerned that Adam Bighill is missing the start of the year with an injury. He finished the year with an injury, played the Grey Cup with an injury. We know this team is a lot different. Adam Bighill's not in that lineup.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
What's important about Adam Bighill is we talk about leadership, for
You
players
can't replace him.
but he has the kind of leadership that I think is the only leadership that matters, and that is the leadership on the field. This locker room leadership, to me, doesn't. You really need guys that actually do it on the field, and he does it in the locker room, and then carries it out and does it on the field as well. I think that's very important and a key component to the success that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have had. So. I think your concern is probably Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans' concern as well. It wouldn't surprise me if they'd be concerned about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and what did you think of Hamilton? Could you tell that they lost some veterans? In this game, you won't be able to tell. So that's one of the things I'm going to look forward to the first games that I watch Hamilton, to see how they're dealing with what has to be a new legion of leaders for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, because there are some gaping holes that have been created by the absence of a couple of retirements.
Well, there were like 90 players on the sideline for them this weekend, and they didn't play a lot of their starters. So I'm very curious. I think even Jamal Peters has been dealing with a little bit of an injury.
Yeah, he was out there saying hello to all his old friends. I saw that in the handshaking ritual. There was a lot of love between those two teams. You wouldn't think that would be the case if you went back a couple of years.
Well, one player who didn't play for Toronto that came from Handle, Tunde Adeleke.
Right.
I was talking to him, and he's like, "Nope." He's like, "It's all going to be business when games come around."
There you go.
You know, he understands. I think that's it's tough. You play for the so long, you win a championship with some of those guys, so there's a bit of that camaraderie, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of it once the season starts.
I guess they're more or less. I guess what you're saying is it's quite possible. Just happy to see each other after an off season, right? They're back playing football again, and then once, like you said, the regular season kicks in, the attitude's going to change a little bit, a tiny bit at least.
Yeah, I know for sure. No, I you're gonna see it once the games come upon. That doesn't matter anymore for sure.
Absolutely, David. Thank you for doing this.
No problem, Frank.
All right, he's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk. And if you want to see other programming, you can watch it on Spanglish World Radio Network. We have news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it here, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Until next time, have a great week.